Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of startups. So today, my guest is from Engagement Media Technologies. We have Seth Elliott. He's the Senior VP and Chief Strategy Officer at the company. So Seth, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Rich. Glad to be here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I brought your slides up. Why don't we start with that, and we'll follow it with Q&A.
Sure. So I'll run through this. Obviously, you'll stop me if you have anything that suddenly leaps to mind. As you've mentioned, I am the Chief Strategy Officer and Senior Vice President of Engagement Media Technologies. And at Engagement Media, we focus on crowdsourced call-to-action engagements on behalf of brands, enterprises, and organizations. So if we move to the next slide, we talk about here what is EngageMe. And as I mentioned, we connect consumers with various brands, merchants, market researchers, various media enterprises, and frankly, any organization that can benefit from crowdsourcing call-to-action engagements. And we do that via our EngageMe technology platform, which includes a back-end database, a series of websites, and several mobile applications, and that these enable organizations and enterprises to invite the user base to complete what we call assignments in return for cash and oftentimes other rewards. So if we move on to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about what we mean by call-to-action activations and why that's so important. More and more today, with the explosion of social, companies and other organizations are trying to find deeper and more engaging ways to reach customers, consumers, audience members, and target markets that they're trying to hit. And at the same time, I think we're all seeing that it's becoming more and more common to hear of brands' frustrations, particularly on the marketing side, with social media and its inability to perhaps drive specific ROI traffic, to drive results, and to really help activate and engage with the consumer and audience base that they're trying to reach. So what we do is offer a link to customers via their smartphones with a direct call to action style. We drive behavioral change, perhaps entering a venue to take a photograph as an example. So at the end of the day, EngageMe enables unprecedented consumer activation opportunities. And if we move to the next slide, what we do is kind of present this in more of a graphic format, focused on the engage, activate, and reward continuum. Essentially what we have, as we view it, is a tasking and rewards platform by which enterprises and organizations, as I mentioned, are able to reach consumers via the mobile device and foster those behavioral changes via call-to-action assignments. And the core components of those are some form of activation via an assignment that involves photographic, video, surveys, spot checks, etc., a form of reward that is generally cash, as well as perhaps discounts or coupons or contests or status, and in return, a response on the part of consumers offering up this user-generated content. And if we move to the next slide, we can get a better feel for what types of assignments and user selection parameters generally we see on behalf of the client side, the organization and enterprise side. So assignments can be anything from general, go into any nearby location to take a photo. They could be targeted, walk into your local Walmart or your local Target or your local Walgreens. They could even be specific, go into the CVS at 123 Main Street. And they can also be geofenced so that we can push assignments to users based on them wandering into a specific proximity in addition or as opposed to simply selecting the user base. And the users themselves can be targeted by a combination of parameters or just a general choice. You can target all users. You could target users by location, by gender, age range, certain interests and affiliations. So you have this robust capacity as an enterprise or organization to choose a set of users and promulgate to them an assignment that can be very general or very specific in regards to location and is usually keyed around content. And what we mean by that in terms of client types are enterprises and organizations kind of across the spectrum. We see brands and advertisers, retailers and merchants. There are entertainment providers that this has an application to. Certainly there are media organizations, news and entertainment, and a great deal of interest from market researchers. All of these types of organizations can apply the technology in order to reach an audience or a target base. And even beyond that, there's an opportunity that we've seen for not-for-profits, for example, to utilize this in the same fashion to activate their user base. So if we move to the next slide, what you can see is kind of the continual process of this application, this mobile application workflow. In this particular example, we're showing it utilizing our specific proprietary mobile application called StringFly, but I should mention that we offer this opportunity via our mobile app, via a rebranded mobile app that does the same thing, and via an API that would allow this functionality to be embedded inside of an existing mobile application on behalf of another user-based client. So here what you see is that an assignment is dispatched to the user. The user opens that on their mobile application, captures content in response to the assignment in order to complete it, provides a description and uploads that content. Our application captures and transmits not just the content, but a set of robust metadata that's associated with it. Another interesting component that we have embedded in our technology is our server generates an auto callback, an actual phone call back to the user, and asks them to record some additional qualitative impressions in regards to the content. And then we can serve that up to the actual end client in any fashion. If we move to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about the types of assignments and go into a little bit more detail about what we see as being used on this platform. As we mentioned, enterprises and organizations use the EngageMe platform to create these call-to-action assignments, and they're focused on activating consumers and fostering some form of behavioral change. There are a number of different elements that get used in this process, and some examples of how the use cases get applied are kind of in-venue assignments. This is where a photo or a video is produced inside a retail location, generally of specific products or services, designed to create interaction between the client, the brand merchant, and the end consumer. Oftentimes, there's a lot of interesting content that is produced off of this, but in many cases, the brand, the end client, is actually less concerned with the specifics of the content than the fact that they've fostered activation on behalf of the consumer base by putting them in venue. We've seen this used for proximity panels, which is a product that we've created utilizing the EngageMe platform, in which consumers can go in and photograph on-shelf products in store and then respond to a specific standardized survey, all of which is used by the brands for specific market research and analysis. In terms of market research, we've seen a great deal of lift on this in general in regards to surveys and responses across the spectrum of product types and service types. Oftentimes, congruent with this is a upload of content, which is kind of a unique component, and the fact that this is being done on mobile means that you've got more than just someone sitting at home taking an online survey. In a similar fashion, we've used this for audience quantification and responding to assignments that are keyed against specific broadcast programming. So during a particular program that you need to be watching in order to be able to complete the assignment. And then a host of other call-to-action engagements. And I'm just going to talk very specifically about a few of these. If we move to the next slide, this goes towards the in-venue engagement activation that I mentioned. Here the assignments are to produce content that really requires a consumer to end up in venue or in store, designed to foster this call-to-action behavioral change. And of course, it's placing the consumer in front of a product and often in front of personnel that could make a sale. And even if that sale isn't made right then and there, it produces this top-of-mind effect. So the example here might be Dunkin' Donuts saying, go into our stores between 11 and 2, take a photo of whatever your favorite of our lunch sandwiches are, and we will give you a reward of $5 plus a coupon. And if you move to the next slide, we talk about the proximity panel that I mentioned. And as I said, this is an on-the-shelf photograph of a specific product on behalf of a brand at a local retailer. That can be general, any local retailer, or it could be specific. Go take those photos only in Walgreens. There's a qualitative consumer impression generated via our auto callback function. And then there's a standardized survey that consumers respond to in regards to the product and its placement. This allows for obviously a host of quantitative and qualitative data capture that the brand can use. And as a bonus, there's a certain amount of top-of-mind engagement activation that occurs because the consumer was in front of these products in store. So if we move on to slide 11, we talk a little bit about the market research activities that we're utilizing the EngageMe platform for. As you might imagine, this seems pretty straightforward. The reality is we're able to deliver consumer feedback at the point of experience. This might be after seeing a movie, immediately after purchasing the product, at post an event. So you get this unprecedented level of consumer insights and data, but that is delivered immediately following the experience the consumer has, as opposed to some point in the future when they may have forgotten or changed their minds about their experience. And naturally, this also allows the ability to target users for follow-up with specific engagement assignments of the type that we've already referenced. And then also, if we move on to the next slide, we can talk about this audience quantification and engagement component. If you think about it, there's a real interesting opportunity here. So much of modern-day viewing of television and broadcast programming is done while people are utilizing their smartphones. So now what we're talking about is the ability to propagate assignments that demonstrate that the participants are watching programming. The assignments are designed so that there are requirements of having viewed the program in order to be able to complete the assignment. We can also design these assignments to send immediately prior to a program's time slot, so they effectively serve as a reminder and drive the audience base back to watch the program if they wouldn't already have the television on. And then, of course, we can also use surveys to obtain demographic information and insights on programming, on commercials and advertisements, on general likes and interests. So there's really a host of data that can be obtained as a result of utilizing this type of platform. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll talk about the team. But just before I do that, I want to mention that in almost all of these cases, remember, the user is receiving a specific reward. In a lot of the cases, that reward is actual dollars, anywhere from $1 to $10 for completing the task. And then there are often other rewards that are either associated with that or in some cases in lieu of cash, and these might be contests or prizes for specific ticket items and the like. But a great deal of these assignments focus on providing the ability to put cash in the pocket of the users that respond to them. So we'll now talk about the team. We're on page 13 of the slide presentation now. So in addition to the technology platform that we have that I've described, our senior team actually has a great competitive advantage, we believe, in the marketplace, because our substantive experience lies in branding, in retailing, in business development, and sales and marketing. So this is a group of senior business guys that are targeting this startup, as opposed to simply a bunch of technologists that have built a cool platform. We have both. We have a strong technology platform, and we have a group of senior managers that are utilizing their network and skill set in the marketplace to drive business. And those people consist of Dan Davidson, who's the founder, a non-operational role primarily now, but he has 25 years as a serial entrepreneur. He founded a company called Top Driver, which was one of the first standardized driver education centers, which was eventually sold to Ford Motor Company. And he was also the founder of a company called Genetrix, which was really one of the first private genetic disease testing firms, which was built to upwards of 300 employees and sold to biopharm giant Genzyme at one point. Our chief executive officer is Vincent Buta. He's got a 25-year track record primarily in sales and marketing, brand creation and management, some licensing and digital and social media, as well as strategic planning. He's had a host of roles in his career. He was the president of the Dashing Diva Salon franchising, which he rolled out worldwide, a health and beauty franchise and a line of products. He also served as Chief Marketing Officer for Steve & Barry's stores, where he created and launched a set of apparel and accessory brands that were associated oftentimes with celebrities. He launched Bitten by Sarah Jessica Parker, Starberry by Stephen Marbury. He launched Deer by Amanda Bynes and a host of others. And he secured over 450 licensing agreements during that time frame. And he actually was very much responsible for helping grow Stephen Barry's retail business from about just over $250 million to over $700 million in about a 4-year time frame. He'd also served as president of ADC, which is an in-store marketing company, and he was the chief marketing officer of Dots, a retail fashion chain, as well as formerly the CEO of Superstock, which was an earlier e-commerce photography site. In his career, he's launched over 400 consumer products for the likes of P&G, J&J, Reebok, Revlon, L'Oreal, etc. So if we move on to slide 14, we have more discussion about our senior teams, including myself, Seth Elliott. I've got about 15 plus years as a founder, advisor, senior executive to digital technology and media growth companies, focused primarily on business and strategic planning and ideation, operational execution, and a lot of corporate and business development. I was the VP of Biz Dev for Fast Call, which was a 500 startups-backed company where I refined and executed the go-to-market strategy and focused on some direct sales to key verticals and leveraged partnerships. I founded the Pegasus Advisors, which is an advisory and business development services company focused on digital growth and digital technology firms. Some of the engagements there included work with City Pockets, which is a venture-backed startup in the daily deal space in New York City, where I classified business development segments, identified target opportunities, etc. I've worked with Red Blizzard to build a launch strategy for their Silverlight product, including targeting Microsoft MVPs. I was formerly the founder of Sneakers.com, which was an internet sporting goods retailer, served as board member for Copyright Control Services, an internet anti-piracy startup, and way back in my life I was the VP of Investment Banking for Commonwealth, where I focused entirely on emerging growth financing during the first internet boom. In addition to myself, we have Oliver Knowlton, who's the president of our One News division, focused entirely on providing the EngageMe platform to news, media, and entertainment sites. He has 25 years in the media publishing business with a great history at Time Inc. He was the VP of New Media at Time for quite some time, and then he was also the VP of General Media at Sports Illustrated. After that, he served as president of Media News Group, which is the second largest newspaper company in the United States, and he focused on all their digital-related activities. If we move on to the next page, we talk about the two final members of our senior team, including Les Chow, who is our VP of Engineering. He's got 10-plus years as a software engineer and a subject matter expert on multiple technologies. He spent over 6 years at IBM in positions that range from web admin, team lead, to performance architect, and he specialized in WebSphere products. And he's been a senior web developer for Taylor & Francis, which is one of the UK's largest publishers, as well as a Drupal consultant for major new media firms such as Rodell and Penton Media and others. And then finally, Grant Powell, who's our Chief Creative Officer. He's got 10 years in branding, digital and social strategy, and business development. He's the founder of Pomegranate, which is a digital agency where he fathered the concept of the network agency model, and he's the founder of concepts like Seeding, Future of Agencies, Engagement Media itself, and Co-Lancing. He was also an art director at Google, where he contributed to the development of the internal agency, which is now known as Zoo, that's responsible for developing the most robust advertising programs that Google has targeted at its Fortune 500 clients. And he's produced over 2,000 brand concepts and 300 websites for dozens of Fortune 500 digital advertising programs and won numerous awards. If we move on to the next page, I just want to talk very briefly before we go into Q&A about our user acquisition strategy, because obviously it's quite important when you're building a platform of this type. We continue to push forward on distributing our existing StringFly mobile application. We have a number of initiatives in that fashion, including some of our own digital marketing spend. We also have three perhaps not necessarily traditional strategies that we pursue. The first of which is our One News vertical. We actually continue to offer media companies free use of our platform and technology for originating and managing user-generated content on the editorial side. So the editorial arms of news and entertainment media organizations can utilize the tool in return for engendering propagation to users, and thus we see a host of fun assignments that will populate the ecosphere as well. Once the time comes that some of those news and media organizations are interested in monetizing, then we migrate towards the EngageMe platform. But if they simply want to use it to reach their user base and create an interesting set of assignments that are news and entertainment focused, we oftentimes just give that away to them. We also have an interesting nonprofit strategy that we've recently initiated. We offer the program for free as a tool to interact with supporters and foster increased engagement from the not-for-profit. However, we've also replicated the idea of affiliate marketing programs on mobile. So what happens is we're able to track where these users come from. And as a result, we donate 1% of all the net revenues we generate from nonprofit supporter base that are responding to branded assignments back to the not-for-profit. So the not-for-profits are obviously incented to encourage their supporters to download the application and to become part of the EMT platform in return for this ongoing stream of passive dollars that are donated back to them. So finally, we've also initiated a focused partnership strategy where we are looking to develop relationships with individual entities, websites, et cetera, that have a large engaged user base. So we're looking at things like market research panel companies that we're working with, entertainment media companies, even some brands and large retailers, as well as other organizations that are not news and media, not-for-profits that have large numbers of engaged users. And we can do this, these types of partnerships in a number of ways. We can brand our app on behalf of the individual partner. We can provide them, as I mentioned earlier, an API. And in all cases, we can structure revenue share deals similar to what we would do with our not-for-profits. And we're having a great deal of success in pushing forward on the partnership strategy as well as the One News vertical. And we've initiated the nonprofit strategy, and it's starting to go quite well. So I think that's it in regards to the specifics of what our company is doing and focused on, and I presume now maybe we'll go into some Q&A.
You bet. Thanks for that, Seth. As you were going through this, I was thinking, boy, I've seen pieces of this before. Like maybe a company like Coca-Cola or somebody would send you into a store and do one task, right, and come back and you'd get some reward. But it was like they threw all these programmers at this one campaign, and then it all goes, into the ether. Is that the origins of this? Did you want to make something that was repeatable and usable for multiple kinds of clients, and maybe not just the Fortune 500?
Well, the short answer is yes. There's a little bit of an interesting longer answer. The company actually was founded upon a technology platform focused on the news and media business. So Dan Davidson, the founder, originally was building out a platform that was structured to enable news media to utilize it to kind of manage and task regular users with the creation of news-oriented content. And over time, we took a look at that and realized when I got involved in the company and when Vincent Buda got involved in the company, we realized two things. One, of course, is that that's not necessarily the strongest business model as it focuses on a set of enterprises that are looking to reduce their cost footprint. But more importantly, that the Engage Me platform, as we call it now, was utilizable for a host of other opportunities beyond simply news and media. So what we've really tried to do, to your point, is create this tasking and rewards engine that can be used from everyone from a news organization to a not-for-profit to a large brand to even a local merchant or a franchisee.
Well, great. That was my next question because, like, say there was a media company that focused on high performance computing, for example, like myself, and they wanted to resell this to our advertisers, right? That maybe they want to engage more with people that come to trade shows and things like that. Uh, does it scale down to that? Can you get the costs
Does.
reasonable?
It
Yeah.
does, and we can talk a little bit about that. So one thing that I think was implied in what I discussed, but I didn't specifically enumerate, is how we charge for this. Everything we do is on a per response basis. So this is performance-driven activation marketing. If you think about what happened in 2004 when Google AdWords really started to take off, and you have this old apocryphal quote in the marketing and advertising field from John Wanamaker, one of the first department store magnates in New York, who said, "I know that half of my advertising budget is wasted, I just don't know which half," right? So pay-per-click started to address that for real in 2004, probably, when it really started to take off and you could really track what was happening when you spent your dollars on pay-per-click. To a certain degree, we believe that's replicable in the real world, which is you should be paying for the activation of these individual consumers when they respond to your assignments. And I think it's important to think about that when I describe all this, because that's how we charge. We charge on a per response basis. Having said that, right, that means that there's some threshold number that it doesn't make sense for us to be involved in. We don't want to structure a transaction in which only 5 or 10 people are targeted to respond. But depending on the type of task and the level of the cost structure, this can go as low as perhaps even 100 or 200 respondents and still scale effectively on the low end, as well as scaling up into the tens of thousands of respondents.
Well, great. So I guess kind of a wrap-up question, does the proliferation of these smartphones, right? Was that a big enabler? I mean, does that just open all these doors and it's only going to become more ubiquitous? I mean, how did you guys look at that?
Well, there's no question that we believe that answer is yes, of course, right? We saw the ongoing proliferation of smartphones, particularly the iOS and Android platform, which is where our proprietary mobile app is made available. You see the penetration of that reaching upwards of 46% of all U.S. adults, all of them, across age ranges that have a smartphone with at least one mobile application on it, which means that there is a great deal of opportunity to utilize this computer in the hand, as we all used to call it. And so for us, it was the kind of the confluence of circumstances. The time was right, and we're not the only ones, right? But the time was right to address this issue and say, so there's a lot that can be done because all these consumers and audience members are armed with this smart device in their hand. And we actually look at on a broader vision that it goes well beyond simply activating your consumer to perhaps become a buyer. Right now, companies, brands, service providers, other organizations spend countless dollars on trying to provide an entire marketing and promotion set that is designed to provoke sales. But as part of that, they do all kinds of other things that aren't necessarily traditional advertising. They do things like pay for before and after shots for beauty products. They do things like pay to audit the compliance of shelf space in retail locations A, B, and C. They do a host of actions that are part of their core business model. So instead of viewing the consumer base as simply a large group to sell to, companies can actually start viewing that consumer base as both a prospective buyer and a prospective provider for some of these other activities information, so that the consumer base and the interaction between a brand or organization and their audience becomes much more one of stakeholders back and forth than simply sales. And the Engage Me platform, we believe, enables that type of relationship, so it goes even well beyond the types of things that we are already using it for today, such as activation and engagement assignments, and can actually really flow forward into a time in which individuals are interacting back and forth with brands and organizations as both a buyer and a provider.
Well, great, Seth. I guess the final question is, how do they engage with you? You guys are in startup mode. What would you suggest for enterprises that want to start doing this?
Sure. Well, as you said, we are a startup. We are a funded startup. We are out there in the marketplace today doing business successfully on this Engage Me platform. So if there's a client side, if there's a brand or a corporate or not-for-profit or a news organization, they can contact me directly. They can email me, seth@engage.me. You can also go to the engage.me website to get a better feel for the kind of things that we're doing. And if you're a user, you can go to the engage.me website, or you could go to the StringFly.com website, which is where you would learn about our mobile application and how you could become a member of this large group that is able to be receiving assignments from brands and organizations and participate in responding.
Well, great. Well, Seth Elliott, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Rich. Thanks for hosting me.
You bet. You bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of startups.